to order the children of Israel, the people of Israel, to bring me olive oil. Wait a minute. Doesn't that sound kind of harsh? I mean, you're to order them? Hey, welcome to this week's Living Torah. Let's go back just a few chapters, and it says that you're to ask the people. Anyone who wholeheartedly desires to give, then they can give into the tabernacle. But here it says you're to order. To use a word that I never use, I'm only using it for the example here, because it's a word that I really can't stand. Maybe that triggers them. Oh no, that reminds them of Pharaoh. That reminds them of the time that they were in Egypt. And the fact that Moshe is going to come into the congregation of the Hebrews and order them to do something. Well, that just kind of, yeah, those rumors have been true. This God that he's telling us to serve, he's just like the Pharaoh of Egypt. And now, since that's the way he's going to treat us, then we're going to treat him just like we treated Pharaoh, with disdain, with hatred. We're not going to follow. We'll do it, but it's not going to be from our willingness. It's going to be because we have to. Kind of a scenario here to consider, isn't it? That is it possible that when he says you are to do something, that we have a problem with that? Especially those of us living in the United States, right? I mean, the land of the free, home of the brave, a place in which, if you look at it, the freest, well, I guess I don't want to get political, but what is known as the freest country in the world has the most laws. And the farther we get away from those laws, the less free we're becoming. Again, not want to get political, but maybe there's some similarities here, that these laws that are giving to us, these orders that he is giving to us, are so that we can remain free. And our attitude toward them is what is going to make the difference. The Hebrew word is savah. It's not a trick. It's not one of those trick words that we go to and we look at the paleo and we look at all these different things and we come up with a different meaning. No. It simply means you are to command. It is the same word that a commander, a commander of troops doesn't give suggestions to his troops. Because why? He wants them to remain alive. And so orders must be given and it must be adhered to without question. And I'll give you a little bit further information on this. The first time that we find this word in the scripture, I haven't done this for quite some time, is in Genesis chapter 2, verse 16. And it says, Adonai Elohim gave the person this order. You are to freely eat from every tree of the garden, except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You're not to eat, because on the day that you eat from it, it will become certain that you will die. Oh, same word. Same word. So when they are ordered to bring olive oil, that is going to begin a process that the Hebrews are familiar with. Now, I didn't have a clue of olive oil. I'm not they question whether I could actually ever truly be an Israeli or even live in the land, because I don't like olives. I've tried to acquire the taste. I just don't like olives. I like olive oil, but not the olives. And I never really understood the concept until it was back in 2012, I guess it was, 13, when I was in Israel and we had finished the grape harvest. Now, as you saw, if you watched the video I did with Nate Waller of the pruning in Israel, and all those videos are still on YouTube. They're on my Vimeo site. If you haven't watched it, go back. It's an amazing study it just relates to Scripture so much and expounds on Scripture, the very process of pruning a vine. Well, the same thing holds true for an olive tree. And so when the people are told you were to bring olive oil, guess what? The first thing they're going to have to do is go to a tree. And maybe walking up to that tree would trigger, because see, the Hebrew words, especially in that day, there were not that many words. Many of the words are related. And so one word is to remind you of something else, the same as Shema, and various other words are related to that. So in this word of Savah, it's the same word. So it's as if the Almighty is trying to get them to walk up to this tree and remember, wait a minute, when Adam and Hava were ordered to go to a tree, and this is how you are to treat this tree versus how you are to treat this other tree. And in obedience to or disobedience to that Savah, they are going to enter into life or death. So there's a lesson to be learned. And that's the fascinating thing to me about creation. I was talking to the guys on Life on Purpose last night. It was an amazing episode. I encourage you to listen to it. But we talked about the concept of do animals operate by any kind of choice, or is it instinct? It's what they do, instinct, that is inbred into them, and sometimes we can see that as a choice. If you have a domesticated animal, we can see at times, as I brought out about our dog Kaya, how she is aware of times that she doesn't make the right choice, but yet her instincts a lot of times overcome that. Well, we as humans, our greatest power that we have is the power of choice. We do have a power that the Almighty has given to us that is, growing up in a Baptist church, we heard these words of omnipresent and omniscient and omni this and that, omnipowerful. But is there a power upon this earth that is greater than the Almighty Himself? That kind of causes people to go into slight convulsions when I say that. But the truth is that He has given humankind a power greater than His power, and that is the power to choose, and that He does not override that power. That's a message all to itself. And so they should be considering this, that in the order, they still have a choice. But if they choose the right side of that, if they choose obedience to the order, then there's a great lesson for them. There's a great learning experience. And that is what creation is to begin with. That's why I don't call it nature and I don't call it my mother. It is the Father's creation. If you use the words Mother Nature, I would encourage you very strongly, lose those words. The earth is not my mother. The Father is my Father. The Creator is my Father, and He has given me the creation in order to teach me about Himself and about me. And so, many of us right now, I'm doing the same. I'm doing this, starting to prepare a garden area. Spring's coming. Here we are at the end of February. Spring's on its way. And so we're starting to prepare. Thinking about, well, what do I want to plant? Do I want to plant the same thing I did last year? But it is a process that we can either go through as many people do on a yearly basis, and go to your favorite box store, buy your plants, grow them from seeds, whatever, put them in the ground, wait a little while, put a little fertilizer, hope you get some rain. The plant comes up, it blossoms, it brings forth fruit, you throw it on the table, and there you're done. Or we can use that experience with creation as a learning experience for ourselves and as a training experience for our children, for our grandchildren. We can teach them about how our own being can be that fallowed ground that has to be broken up. We can teach them about how a seed is planted, how it has no choice but to germinate. The plant, given the right conditions, is going to grow. It is going to bear fruit, but we have to protect it from insects that will seek to devour it. We need to protect it from the deer that want to come eat it, all of those things. And then when we get the fruit, what do we do with it? Do we just consume it all ourselves? Or do we give a portion of it in some way or another unto the Almighty? Okay, these are all things that we can do. And the olive, I order you to bring me olive oil. So how is an olive, how do we get olive oil? And that's something that, you go to a Walmart shelf or wherever else and you get olive oil. It's like, okay, well, which one do I get? Okay, well, this one's first press and this one's organic and this one is, I don't know what this one is and this one's flavored. And, we're standing there in front of 100 different bottles of olive oil and never understanding the concept of olive oil. Because an olive tree is very unique in that it is the only tree, I believe, the only tree in Israel during the winter that does not lose its leaves. Which is, and Moshe Kempinski brings out a lot of teaching on this, which is a great teaching of itself in that no matter the conditions, it still has its leaves. No matter how much snow or rain or wind or whatever, it still has its leaves. It is still able to, at a moment's notice of the change, it doesn't have to go through a leafing process before it goes to a fruit process. It's already there, ready to go into that fruiting process. The olives are brought forth on the tree, and they do not ripen on the tree. Now, in order, and I learned this, we went over, we had these huge nets, like a small, fishing net, but very, very tight. And we would put these huge nets down under the tree. And then I never forget the first time I saw this and was given a stick. It said, "Go beat the tree." What? I used to get in trouble for taking a stick to a tree. And now you're telling me to beat yes, because that's how the olives come forth from the tree. You walk up to this tree with all the branches, and you take this stick and you start beating the tree, and all of a sudden olives start coming down on top of your noggin. And hopefully you put the net out far enough that you're catching all of these olives in the net. When you start beating the tree, there's some olives that just lose their hold on the tree immediately and fall to the ground. Then there's others that you got to beat a little closer. You got to pretty much hit the olive itself to get it to come forth. And then when that process is over, then as I got to do, you climb up in the tree with your stick and you start beating. And then you got those olives that just refuse to let go. And you got to reach out and pick those and let them fall to the ground. After this process, so those there's that first press. This would have been known. I'm sure there's mechanical things that are done now, but you put the olives into the dolebs. Again, talking about the dolebs, the big crates, like a milk carton on steroids. And so you put these in there, and the weight of the olives begins to press down on the olives in the bottom to the point that they begin to crush. And that is that extra virgin olive oil. It did not have to have a process. It released its oil willingly. And that is known as the best oil. So this takes us to a thought here of what does the Father have to do to make us bring forth oil? Now, in Scripture, we would consider that the oil of the Spirit, the oil of gladness. Kathy just did a study on this actually while I was in Israel. So oil is known as something that produces a gladness. It is something that can produce light. If you put a wick in there and you light it, it can produce light. We see in the book of Acts the Holy Spirit is and in Psalms and various other places that the Spirit of God is likened to oil. So this whole scenario is about us being filled with His oil, that we're like that olive. That we're, all of a sudden we come forth in our season and we grow on that tree, which is our comfort zone. I'm hanging on to the tree, but you're not going to get olive oil that's going to be useful for cooking, for seasoning, for giving light. The purposes of olive oil are locked in the olive until the olive lets go. So how much of a process does the Father have to put us through? Are we the olives, or is our life like, hey, here he comes, I see the stick, I'm letting go. I want to be the first one to the ground. Okay, I want to be the first one in that carton over there so that my oil can come out right away. Or, I'm kind of comfortable here in this tree. I mean, I know the birds kind of light around me a lot, but this is where I came from. This is my, I'm getting my source from this tree, and if I let go of this tree, I'm not going to have any source, and so we keep that oil inside of us. How much beating life? Let's face it, guys. Life beats you up, doesn't it? Yeah, really does. How much beating is it going to take to get that olive oil to flow from you? I've been with people, just kind of thinking about this, I've been with people numerous times in hospitals, ICU. I've seen the so-called deathbed conversion. Took quite a beating to get that out of them, didn't it? And all of a sudden the story is, wow, they were such a blessing there in those last days to the nurses and the doctors, and there was such a witness. Yeah, but look what it took. Look what the Father had to put this person through. And I'm talking in generalities here, okay? Don't put somebody in there that's not supposed to be. But look what it took to get that person. I mean, I got to consider my own life, 40 years ago. And what it took for the Father to get the oil to start flowing. Many of us have gone through those testimonies of coming to the end, okay, which is kind of like, I'm up in this tree and I'm hanging on for dear life, not understanding that if you hang on for dear life, you will eventually die, and you will fall to the ground, and your olive oil, that which is inside of you that could have been a blessing to others, basically dries up in you. What are we going to do? So this is all in this concept of ordering the people to bring the olive oil. Now, we go through the last 8 chapters, and it's been quite a progression. I'm probably not going to get to some of the stuff in my notes. It's been a bit of progression here. Is we go from in Exodus chapter 20, the 10 words, the 10 commandments, and then after the commandments, we're told about a bondservant that comes into the house, into the master's house, and for 6 years becomes acquainted with the commandments, the savah, the commandments. And I know that the word for that is used back in Exodus is different, mitzvah, mitzvot. But these mitzvot, if we will look at them not as suggestions, but as commandments for our good, and that's what the bondservant did. He comes into the house. He's a servant. He's a slave. He's been purchased. His life has, he's gone through some knocks. I mean, really, he's gone through some time of beating. And he enters the house. And all of a sudden he finds a different way of life. At the end, when he's told that he can leave, he says, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't. I love my master. And so I don't want to go anywhere. And so he becomes that bondservant of the house. And then we go to chapter 25 and begin to look at the tent. The place in which the Almighty says, I want you to build me a tent that I can dwell there. But this Torah portion kind of adds everything that's needed here. Because consider if the tent is built, the olive oil is brought, the implements, the gold and the silver and the ram's skin and all of those things it's all put together. The sacrifice is, or as it's all there, as we'll read at the end of Exodus chapter, I think it's 38, the Shekinah, the glory comes. It animates the tabernacle. There's fire on the altar. Maybe the fire goes over to the menorah and lights it, and the altar of incense. But what happens if nobody's there? The fire eventually goes out, and it just becomes a tent. It becomes, could we say, a burden? An empty tent that is really serving no purpose other than, look what we built. Listen to what I'm saying. Look what we built. Look at it. Look at our tent. We're putting God's name on it, even though he's not here anymore. And every time we go somewhere, we're going to move this tent. The tent becomes a burden instead of life. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just explained to you religion. Religion becomes a burden. We name it. We get a bank account in a building and put a name on it. And then it becomes a burden instead of what it was supposed to be, which is life. But this tent, though it will be animated with the Shekinah, it is also animated with the people. The people inside of the tent. See, the tent without the priests that are serving the Almighty or serving the people. The answer is yes. They're serving both. They're helping the people in their service unto their Creator. And that's the job of a priest. Without them, it's just an empty tent. So, as I read through, and I'm not going to get into the details of Aaron's garments. There's so much here, but I'm just not going to take the time on this Torah portion to do so. As you look at the garments, it says, "Bring Aaron and his sons," and of course that will become their offspring, and we will see the whole Levitical priesthood come out of this. It begins, though, with Aaron. And those that Aaron, his sons, and the family that will be after that. So Aaron, in my estimation, is a picture of the Messiah. Now, we see that Messiah, son of David, is a king and a priest. We see that I believe, in the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef, the suffering servant, that he is the priest. Today, he is representing us in that heavenly realm, in that, whatever that realm tabernacle is. And when he returns to this earth, will do so as in his priestly role, but also in his kingly role. Okay, that's another teaching and goes into a number of other things. But I wonder, and this is one of those things that my mind wanders around a lot sometimes regarding these things. I wonder if the priestly garments that were made for Aaron, if they're the same size as Yeshua. You know, what size coat does he wear? I don't know. 44 long, whatever. I don't know. But is when Aaron, I put this in the book I wrote a number of years ago, They Walk Toward the Promises. I just got this feeling when I was writing that book. This thought came to mind that when the coats, when the robes and the garments were placed upon Aaron, did he get this overwhelming feeling that, wait a minute, these clothes have never been worn by anybody, but I feel like I'm wearing somebody else's clothes. I feel like I'm like the mannequin. I'm the person that's standing in for a person that's actually going to be the one wearing these clothes. The one worthy to wear those clothes. Think about it. You can take that one or leave it. So that brings us to another another place is were Aaron's sons and the robes that were being placed upon them, were they our size? Now I'm not speaking in specific here of whatever size you are. But would they today fit us the same as they fit them? But we're told by Peter, Shimon Kefa, that we are to be a royal priesthood, a holy nation. He didn't come up with those words. Those words go back to the Torah. And so is it possible that we should be looking at those, that we should be looking at those garments as kind of something we should be wearing, of servanthood? They could be called the robes of service. The robes of service. When they put those robes on, they weren't going to Walmart. They weren't going out to dinner. They put those robes on for one specific reason, and that was to serve. To serve the Creator and to serve the people in helping them to serve the Creator. What if we all began to do that? What if we took those scriptures that Shaul wrote of, consider others better than yourselves. Let the words of Yeshua, words of the disciples. If anyone wants to be the greatest, let him be a servant of all. The words of Messiah. He talks a lot about being a servant, the humility. As you read through the gospel, or as you read through the apostolic writings, there's one thing that comes up in common with Shaul, Paul, with Kepha, Peter, with Jude, across the board, with John on the Isle of Patmos. They all called themselves servants. Yet these are the ones that walked with or saw Yeshua himself. I mean, they were the billboards. They could have walked around with a T-shirt. I was there when. They knew him. They had heard him pray. They had heard him teach. They had heard him expound. They had seen him. They had sat maybe on the north shore of the Galilee, and as he was sleeping, just sat there and stared at him, wondering, who is this really that's in the midst of us? They had every right. They had every reason to make themselves out to be something because of where they had walked, because of the calling they had. I'm a Talmudim. I'm an apostle. I'm a disciple. I'm all the above. Instead, they called themselves servants. Paul, I believe, would actually call himself a bondservant. So how are we doing at serving? Consider a congregation you go to. How are you doing at serving? Do you just come in to get or to give? How you doing at that? Do you show up in time to move chairs around? Do you show up in time that if the tables need to be moved around, or the coffee pot needs to be filled, or something else needs to happen, or whatever it is? Do you show up in time for that, or just barely made it? Wow, hey, I'll take that chair over there, nice comfy one. Yeah. How are we doing at servanthood? How are we doing at servanthood with our families, with those around us, with acquaintances? Are we showing a priestly concept that is patterned after Messiah? Or just kind of running along as life is about us? Last night, the guys on Life on Purpose, we talked about the study that was done. The part of it was, the part we were actually looked at was in 1968, about the mice. The mice in a controlled environment, in a utopia. And what happened to 8 mice? 25 different times. What happened to 8 mice? Pretty phenomenal, folks, that we live in that same mouse colony today. But you and I have the choice whether to succumb to that colony the same as the mice did, or to do something different. Now, as Aaron and the boys are all, in their robes. There is a sacrifice. It's in chapter 29, verse 9, starting in 19 and 20. In 20, you are to slaughter the ram, take some of its blood, put it on the lobe of Aaron's right ear, the lobe of his son's right ears, on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the big toes of their feet. Again, I know I've taught on this in the past, but I think it's so important for us to be reminded of. A number of years ago, there was a book called, still out, a really great book to read called In His Steps. There is a children's version also, probably on audiobook by now, but about a pastor who was basically pastoring an empty room. Oh, there was people that were showing up, but there was really nothing happening. And so he went to, in prayer, he thought about what and I'll use terminology for it, what would Messiah do? And so he went to his church on I believe it was on New Year, and said, we're going to start right now, in this new year, asking ourselves the question in what we do. What would Messiah do? You know, that book's been around for ages. But the concept is more important with each passing day. So they were told that they were going to anoint the ear, the thumb, and the big toe. Well, why? Why those three things? Well, go back to the bondservant, just a few chapters earlier, that came to the doorpost, and all was placed in their ear, and it's about hearing. But that hearing needs to be submitted to the blood of the sacrifice, understanding that when he, how do I term this? When he gives us an order, we should also remember the blood that he shed for the right to give us the order. Think about that. The blood that he shed. No greater gift is this, that a man should lay down his life for his brethren. When that blood was applied, this was I don't know if, I really doubt if Aaron and the boys really understood this. Maybe they did it at a level that I don't understand. I don't know. But when we hear his word, faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of Elohim. So when we hear the word, we should consider the blood that was shed so that we could hear that word. I mean, am I talking about what time frame? Go back to the garden. Blood was shed. Blood was shed so that Adam and Eve could once again hear the word. That blood represented the blood that would be shed 4,000 years later in Messiah. So when we hear his word, we should also consider the cost that was paid so that we could hear his word. Are we hearing like Messiah heard? Are we striving to hear as he heard? Messiah himself, who took upon the form of a man, still submitted himself to his Father's word. We are to the thumb. If you lose your thumb, try to pick up something. Try to pick up something without your thumb. Okay? It's possible, but it's not easy. It's possible to pick up something and throw it, a ball or whatever, but it's not as easy. You lose a lot of the function of your hand. And we should consider that without his blood, the power, go back to the old songs, there's power in the blood. The blood will never lose its power. Without the work, his work in our lives, we may be able to do something, but our doing will be very much hindered. It will be, we might be able to do some good things, but we won't be able to do what we could do if we relied upon his power flowing through our lives in what we do. And next is it was on the big toe. I'm told that if you lose your big toe, I've got a friend of mine that's lost one leg and a toe, and it took a long time to learn how to walk again. That big toe, you may not think about it too much unless you stub it on something in the middle of the night. Then all your attention goes to that big toe. But that big toe is what gives you balance, is what I'm told. So his blood applied, the power of when I say his blood, I'm talking about the redemptive work. I'm not just talking about the liquid, the plasma. I'm talking about the redemptive work. So when that blood was applied to the ear, to the thumb, to the toe, it was symbolic of his redemptive work being applied to each part of our lives. From our hearing to our doing to our walking. That everything is to be submitted to that redemptive work. Now, lastly, we'll go over to chapter 30. You are to make an altar on which to burn incense. The incense altar is intriguing to me, as every piece of the tabernacle is. But see, the blood, which is placed upon the altar, it goes different places, yes, but it is limited in where it goes. Follow me. The blood it drips down from the sacrifice onto the coals. The coals are then taken to the altar of incense, which we're talking about here, and then the blood is placed upon the altar, the Ark of the Covenant. The light of the menorah, for the most part, stays within the in the holy place. The showbread stays in the holy place. The water of the laver stays in the outer court. But the incense, the smoke of the incense transcends all of it. In fact, the smoke of the incense not only transcends the tabernacle itself, but the whole camp. So the whole camp of the Hebrews smells like the incense of the altar. It cannot be held into a single place. Now, this incense it's interesting in that the incense altar is fueled by the coals of the altar. So coals are taken from the altar in the outer court, and now they're placed onto the altar of the incense. But what about those coals? Those coals are also stained with the blood of the sacrifice. So we could say that what you're smelling in the camp is redemption. So you're smelling redemption. When they breathed in the incense, stopped and went, wow, it's really, really strong today. It's got it just seems sweeter today than it ever has. Maybe it's because the person, it was the same incense, it was the same smoke, but maybe that day was the day that the person just needed a little extra reminder of redemption in their lives, because they were smelling. The aroma of the incense that they were smelling was produced because of the blood-stained coals of the altar, all speaking of Messiah. Wow. A lot to think about. A lot to think about as we walk through these chapters and we continue on through them. I pray that something along the way is something you can take with you. We need to ask ourselves this question: how's my smell? Are we producing the aroma of the altar, or an unclean smell in the camp? It's a question. It's a question each of us has to answer for ourselves. It's day 140, I think it is, as I'm recording. The war rages in Israel. There's now more troops going to the northern border, being taken out of Gaza. It's anybody, we don't know. You can listen to all these pundits and YouTubes and everything out there, and in the end, you find that maybe most of them, probably the vast majority, are a waste of your time, because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow in the United States, in the world. Things could, every morning we can wake up and we would be in a totally different place. What we do know is this: there's a war that's raging in Israel today. I just sent an offering yesterday. I just received a thank you note from one of the soldiers that I know, one of the commanders, someone in training for a commander, an officer. I just received a note this morning saying thank you for some of the work that we did there. And I say we because it's all of us, all of you who have prayed, who have given. We're all in this together. And please don't forget. Please don't forget. In your prayers, in your giving, please do not forget what is going on there. I can tell you this, I believe this to be true, it's coming here. The question is not if, the question's when. And I say here, wherever you are in the world, you're here. The war is coming to you at some point. Maybe what we do in standing with Israel will in the end make a difference of him standing with us. Just something to think about. Shabbat Shalom. Shavua Tov. Have a blessed, prosperous week. Bezrat Hashem, God willing. See you again next week. And until then, as always, be strong.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.